I can utterly not believe that people think this Styrian Grand Prix was boring. What a massive understatement and discredit to the race if you say that. Anyway, let's get right into this video now. Now, straight away, if you think this was a boring race, you are completely and utterly wrong. And the midfield battle in this race was epic, if not better than the previous races this season. And of course, I have got to say thanks to the Sky people, the people at Sky who have been showing the midfield and following the criticism they got online for not showing the midfield battles enough as well. They are very, very exciting and close, so I am just so happy that they are showing these battles now in the races. And of course, I think this race was even better for Lando Norris than the race that he got a podium in, and I have my reasons. He fought through the field, of course, getting that penalty for quali because of the yellow flags incident, which was a bit clumsy on his part. So, of course, the qualifying was compromised, but he had a very good one. He started pretty far back in the field and made his way up to fourth. That last lap from Lando Norris was epic, and I think he's the strongest midfield driver out of the lot, and that includes the Ferrari drivers now, because they are a midfield team. I thought it was a fluke when I first saw Ferrari in the midfield. And of course I was proven completely wrong. It was not a fluke. They just have a car that I think the Sky people said were, like Martin Brundle and Crofty said, it was 1 second behind the current their last car in 2019, and they could have just run the 2019 car and been faster. So massive disappointment, these two races, and this whole Austrian Grand Prix, sort of 2 weekends, the Styrian Grand Prix as we like to call this one. But it's a massive disappointment for Ferrari. Yet I feel like the real winners from these two events are McLaren, because of course McLaren have been getting epic results because of Ferrari being in the midfield, and I think the Racing Point car is better than the McLaren. It's just the Racing Point drivers and strategists once again weren't up to par with McLaren, and that's been giving McLaren lots of great luck and great chances on podiums. And of course Mercedes have to be a winner in this Grand Prix, as of course Mercedes have pulled they're the leading team. Both their drivers are the first two in the driver standings. Of course, Valtteri Bottas and Lando Norris are both massive winners. Of course, Norris getting that podium in the first race and a fourth, which puts him still ahead of Max Verstappen. And that is very impressive from the young rookie. Of course, Valtteri Bottas is a massive winner from this event because he got what he needed in 2019, a win, of course, way ahead of Lewis, and also in the second race he came a close second to Lewis. Of course, Albon was a bit off the pace this weekend, and a bit disappointing for him, of course, but, well, yeah, you can't expect him to be straight away on the pace, especially he was up with the Mercedes in the previous weekend, and I feel like he has got what it takes to be in Red Bull. And of course Sebastian Vettel last weekend having his spin, and let's move on to the topic of Charles Leclerc and Sebastian Vettel. Of course, Sebastian Vettel had a bad Austrian Grand Prix, but the Styrian Grand Prix looked up for him because he qualified in the top 10 like Charles Leclerc managed to the previous weekend, and of course he also was well ahead of his teammate, and he seemed to have the pace in all the practice sessions, and of course qualified in the wet. And well, what a disappointment. Charles, I don't think that's at all Seb's fault. The manoeuvre, first of all, I'm just going to get that straight out of the way. It is by far not Seb's fault, and I am one of his biggest fans, of course, and I would be first to point the blame at Seb if it was his fault, but it wasn't. It was Charles Leclerc's fault. Of course, the manoeuvre was very clumsy from Charles, trying to do what Seb did in the first race, but on the first lap. It was a bit of a first lap incident. Of course, he was of course wanted to repeat what Seb did, so he decided, why don't I spin? Sadly, Seb was in the way of the spin, so he went over the top of Seb, ruining his floor and also ruining Seb's back wing, which is a giant disappointment to Ferrari, and I just feel bad for all the drivers, and especially Mattia Binotto, who I feel is under more pressure than anybody at the moment to get his team to perform. And well, let's just hope Ferrari have a better weekend in the Hungarian Grand Prix. I hope in Hungary, for definite, Ferrari has a better weekend, because this is what happened. I'm going to do a replay through pictures. Of course, Leclerc angling his car up and going for a gap that was not there, sending himself over the back of Seb, ending up with Seb's front wing off, rear wing off. Disappointing for both the Ferraris, and of course both the drivers have made mistakes over these 2 weekends, so they're both of course, Seb in the Austrian Grand Prix doing his spinella, and now Leclerc wanted a bit of the fun, and he just decided to take his teammate out, and both the cars retired, and well, what a disappointment. Let's move on to Max Verstappen, who had a, so we say, average race, because it wasn't terrible like his previous Grand Prix. Of course, DNFing, but it wasn't that great either. Of course, the Red Bull had less pace than the Mercedes cars, and of course, Verstappen got overtaken by Valtteri Bottas and well, just disappointing from Max's point of view. Carlos Sainz had a decent weekend, and Sergio Perez, unfortunately, had a little clumsy mistake with Albon, and well, Norris overtook him. Lance Stroll, a bit of a static race from him, well, that's a bit of a run through of all the incidents in the race. Of course, apart from George Russell, who had his little mistake, of course, flying over the gravel trap after making an error, which proved very costly. He could have possibly got points, even though I doubt it. I think he could have at least got a 14th, and he didn't, because he made a mistake while fighting with Magnussen, and disappointing from him, of course. And well, it was, of course, this race weren't as good as the Austrian Grand Prix, but it was still decent, and well, let's just end the video. I have been Ben from the F1 News Squad. This has been my Styrian Grand Prix race review, and Ben out. Just very, very, very disappointing for the Ferraris. disappointing. I feel bad for both of the drivers and the team principal. What a race. What these two races have been epic. They are just the best races ever.